Welcome to Quantum Alchemist Master Podcast. In this space, we share our journey in the awakening and integration process without judgment, building an all-inclusive community of awareness, love, support, and full acceptance. Reminding you that you are the master, you are the healer, you are the medicine, you are a divine, infinite, multidimensional being. You are source in human form. We all are. Everything you seek outside of you is inside, inviting you to go within so that you remember who you really are. Step into your true potential, create your own reality, and contribute to the reality of the collective. The change starts with you. We're all one, and love is the answer. Hi, Elise. Welcome to Quantum Alchemist Mastered Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm excited to hear a little bit about you, your hero's journey, how you got to where you are today. And please share from your heart whatever comes up, whatever you want to share about yourself.
Well, I am so grateful to be here with you. And I am so grateful that you are having this podcast for everyone to, learn about themselves and who they are as humans. And about me, well, I think I've got here from the School of Hard Knocks, a very long education in the School of Hard Knocks. So we can get more into that if you'd like. But basically, life struggles that brought you to awakening of your mind and take your responsibility for yourself and your actions and who you are and be as a person.
So as you know, because we met slightly before, just a couple days prior to this, to talk a little bit about the dynamics and stuff. And I told you, I have no clue where this is going to go. And sure thing. So now I feel called to talk about your childhood. What was that like?
It's funny. I was just thinking about this the other day. So thank you for bringing it up because I just started to do more inner child work. And it brought a lot of emotions. So I had a great childhood in the aspect of we were an upper middle class family. You didn't want from anything. My father was a very funny guy. It was always like fun to be around, and I was daddy's little girl. I had two older brothers and I had a younger sister, and we could speak about her. She had committed suicide, but growing up as children, we were all together, obviously. So I was very close in age with my sister and tight with her. Two older brothers, much older. One's 11 years older, one's 6 years older. And I have a lot of good memories because they're of being fun, and that kind of stuff. But now as an adult looking back, I realized I wasn't really ever seen or heard. And you feel like invisible and unimportant. And none of those words come out of your parents' mouths, but that is the unspoken word. And I also, I don't really remember the age. I can't even say it specifically. I had gotten very overweight. So not only, and I just actually said this to my husband the other day. We were speaking about the child stuff, and I was like, I never really got made fun of from friends or anything like that, but my family would make fun of me. So, so my childhood was like this, you're not really accepted for what you are. No one's even asking you your opinion. You're just, just seen and not heard. Not seen, not heard.
Thank you for bringing this up, because when we're dealing with specifically the subconscious mind, which runs a lot of our programming, and if you haven't done a lot of the work, it's hard to bring it into our awareness that that's even happening to us. And we don't necessarily have to go through big traumas, like abuse or something like that. It could be things like this. And I'm not saying you haven't, I haven't touched on that with you. I'm just saying in general, we don't necessarily have to go through a big trauma to have things. We all have things that we need to work on, and things that happen to us that we're just learning and looking back in retrospect and kind of putting those parts back together. Kind of putting those pieces, those parts of us that maybe wouldn't know how to cope, as a lot of the inner child work and stuff like that. I would like to if you can speak about your sister, how old were you when that happened?
19.
19. That must have been, I cannot even, I have not gone through that. I cannot imagine
Mm,
what your reality must have been, completely shattered, your heart, your soul. If you guys were close, I imagine it's like missing half of your soul, like somebody so close, kind of. How did you cope with that? Like what, how
mm.
did that go?
She had, in my opinion, now as an adult and knowing more I know about this whole world, I think a lot of it was brought on by the medications that she was given. She had like severe depression issues and stuff, and I believe the suicide in and of itself was caused by the medications. This is going back many, many years ago, and they didn't know half of what they know now, and even now they don't really know much. So how did I cope? First of all, it was, and I don't, and if she was here right now, she would understand why I'm saying this. It was a little bit of a relief, and not that you don't want your sister in your life, but because of where she was in her life and the in and out of mental institutions, whether she should have been there or not, and there's the chaos of the family, quote unquote, caused by her. So it was almost like it's like a relief because, and I've spoken to other people about this. So it's like you almost feel guilty because you're relieved because of all the problems and everything. But in the other aspect of how do you cope as this, your baby sister, um, it, it's so different. I'm trying to think back how specifically, because I've always been kind of into higher consciousness without knowing I was. Um, I did not have a very supportive boyfriend at the time. So I was like thinking, I brought this up to myself the other day. This is why I'm like, so I try to get the words out to say what I want to say. I wasn't supported to like, how are you doing, Elise? I was never asked, like, how are you doing, Elise? It was more like, everyone kind of just went about their life. We all, as a family, were mourning, but no one ever really asked me how I was doing. And I've always been the caretaker for other people, like, how are you doing? So I don't think I was even took the time out to say, like, how am I doing? Of course, you're mourning, you're crying, and I just think I don't want to say ignored it, but I just like moved on quicker than I think I probably should have. And then as I got a little older, then I started to go through some work, like writing her letters and, saying I miss her and some of the things, and just, I think people push it under the rug. At least that's what like my family seemed to have done. And my coping was, I was young, and like, you just continue with your life. Everyone's going out, going out dancing every weekend. And like, you cry, you have your time, you have your funeral, and then you kind of like go back to life. And I don't think I gave myself a chance to mourn fully for her at the time.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, you still have both of your parents alive?
No, my dad died he was very young. That was, you said this before, the word trauma. And I think for me, the word trauma, I don't like to use it. I think people use it way too much, but that was a big thing for me. I was very close with my dad. He died when he was 55, and my mom is alive now. She's in her mid 80s, but to me, my mom died a long time ago because she's just existing. So, but to answer your question, the long short of it is, the short long of it, whichever way you want to say that, my mom is still alive. Yes.
Okay. So a lot of the reasons why I ask all of these things is because from my own personal experiences, my challenges, I like to see them as challenges, not traumas.
Yes. Like that.
To me, they're all initiations to the soul, um, for the spirit, to just expand, continue expanding, transforming, this just never ending process of evolution. Of course, I not always did I have this understanding, but um, what I want to get to, and how I want to shift this conversation is, I know that now a lot of the work that you do is helping other people overcome all of these obstacles. But what I like before we get into what you do is to talk about some of the pain points, because we are in this position having gone through the fire, having gone through the darkness, having walked on the fire ourselves. We know what it feels. We know what it feels like when you're in darkness, when you can't see a way out. And a lot of the tools I'm sure that you share in your coaching and in your services is what has served you, what the tools that you know that allowed you to get through this. So that's why I get so personal, because we don't do this just as a sales pitch or as, no, we lived it and we are living it, just in different, from different aspects and different scenarios now in our lives. Have you ever been through divorce?
Yes.
Okay, that's another big thing. A lot of our clients have been through divorce, have been through loss, have been through depression, mental health. If we keep avoiding these conversations, if we keep pushing it under the rug, how we've done it for so long, just to be able to survive and thrive in life and, whatever, pay your mortgage, your stuff. I get it. But it's really, I don't believe it's serving us in this point. I think it is the time to sit with that, to bring light to that, to reflect, to introspect, to question everything about ourselves, like our thoughts, like if you have suicidal thoughts, so why am I having those? What's the root cause of that? Why is it coming up? Menopause. I'll talk about that too. Basically, your curriculum is like you have all the check boxes.
Like I said, it's a school hard knocks. Well, I want to touch on that because, I'm a firm believer, and I have a feeling you're going to agree with this, that, and you can use the diamond in a rough, like diamonds cannot become diamonds without all that high pressure. And I don't think anyone, maybe you're born elevated, to the place, maybe you are, but chances are that you've gone through some deep shit, dark places that you never thought, or maybe you thought you're going to be there forever. And then you come out on the other side, and that is where you grow, and that's where you elevate, and that's where you become more awake. And no one wants to feel some of these things, but the feeling of the shitty shit is what gets you to a higher place. And, when you're on the other side, the dark side, you may not think that. So we are lighthouses. That's what I like to say. We are lighthouses in people's storms, because when you're going in it and you don't see a mentor, if you will, or a coach or someone, then you wouldn't know. So how would you know that there's life on the other side? There's I call it the happily ever after. And you brought up divorce, and that's like my specialty. I'm not really happy about it that that's my specialty, but it's my specialty because that's what I overcame. We spoke about the death of my dad and my sister, but one of the biggest things that I've gone through was my divorce from my children's father. I'm now remarried, but that was one of the darkest times of my life.
Could you share anything about that time, if it's okay?
I will. It's hard for me to share it, and we've discussed this privately, but I will touch on it. For starters, I'm grateful for it all. Truly, truly, truly grateful for every part of it. And for me, it was that I did not know at the time when I was leaving that my ex-husband was a narcissist. And if he hears this, he will argue that fact, but but that's what that is my opinion. So if you want me to be, this is my opinion of what I've learned. And I thought that since we were together, I was with him since I was 15 years old. And I thought that since we were high school sweethearts and, we were together for a very, very long time, that it would be amicable and that we would be friends. And I was so excited to be able to have that healthy breakup, if you will. And it didn't go that way. And if you want to get into the whole thing, I'm sure your listeners would love to hear about narcissism, or they might not even know they're going through it. But the whole thing happens when you leave them or tell them they don't want to be with them anymore. And there's smear campaigns. They lie. They go behind your back and tell people things that aren't true to make people side with them. And the most hurtful thing for me, that it was done to my children. And it, not to get into specifics, but it was a very horrible time for me because I did not know what it was.
Wow.
Now it's very prevalent to have. It's called parent alienation, and he'll, if he ever heard this, I'm sure he would fight me to the end that he never did that, but he did. And that was my experience with him. Might not be someone else's, but my experience with him was that. And I thought I was going crazy. I didn't know what was going on. Thankfully, now that I know about it, I always had my children. They weren't like gone, but I got the scraps. So that period of time for me was dark because since he played the victim so hardcore, my family kind of took his side.
Wow.
So, yeah. So not only are you going through this thing, not only are you going through all the emotions of like your kids and the whole thing, your family is not even supporting you. They were not in my life, but like they weren't supportive. They basically like, I don't want to use the term turn their back on me because that wasn't the case. It one part, sometimes it was, but yeah, but that's why it was very, very, very hard for me. And I'm still unpacking a lot of that because I don't think I realized how much mental abuse went on. I'm still unpacking a lot of that.
Thank you for being vulnerable first. I know it's a very private matter,
Yeah.
and sharing it with us. But believe me, your voice is the voice of millions.
Yes. That's what's inspired me to tell it, because I don't want to interrupt you, but Rosalia, this has been one of my stories that I've been holding in out of fear. And I'm going to tell the listeners this because they might have the same fear. It's because I know what he's capable of doing. And, and my kids are grown men now, but they stand by, if it came push to shove, they might get very defensive. I'm not scared I'm going to lose. I can't believe I'm going all out here, but screw it. This is what we're doing.
This is why we do what we do.
Yeah. This is, I don't mind telling the story to anyone, but I do mind if I have a very, very big fear of not losing my kids, but just our relationship is great. And I just don't want anything to get in the way of that. And it may.
Here,
But
I'll say
here
this.
I am.
I'll say this so that you don't have you don't feel, because I know on a one-to-one you will come all out with your clients and
Oh,
with
yeah.
your friends, and you would just dive deep into the real shit, pretty much. So here's what we do. At the end, we're gonna share how you're helping everybody else, how what you offer and stuff like that. There's so many people going through divorce, both men and women.
Yep.
The bottom line of this is you've been through it,
Mm.
and it's dragged on and it's been messy, which usually most of them are. And you have a lot of experience with it. So if anybody really wants to dive deep and personal, because we're mirrors of each other's, we're
Mm.
students, both students and teacher, even though you're the coach.
Yes.
Um, a lot of these things help us identify with it and kind of see how you see it differently or how you understand it differently. Or sometimes even recognize things that you didn't know they were like narcissistic traits, for example.
Right.
So I will leave it, if anyone's interested, to dive deep into this particular conversation about divorce, about how to get through it, how to transcend it, and how to use it for purpose. Because a lot of our pain is it's the alchemy process to transform that into your purpose. And helping people through divorce has been part of your purpose and
Yes.
continues to be. So just for the sake of keeping certain details that are more private out.
Oh, I
Um,
basically went all out. I didn't get.
well,
You
no,
know what
because
I mean?
I'm sure there's a lot of
Yeah.
specifics and a lot of things
Yeah.
that a lot of people will identify with, but I
Absolutely.
would much rather, if you offer like a discovery call or something like that, or however you want them to reach out, um, that would be a good starting point. Start somewhere. Ask for help if you're going through. If you feel Like, you, first of all, if you're suicidal, please reach out for help. Okay. If you're going through mental health, if you're going through divorce, if you're in a dark place, all of us as a humanity, we're ascending in consciousness together.
Absolutely.
What that's going to entail a lot of chaos, perceived chaos, from our limited perception. Our life is going to crumble probably 360 degrees, and your health, your marriage, your all of it, because it's like the phoenix rising, right? Something has to die for something new to be rebirth. And you have a lot of experience with death and rebirth. So I would just encourage somebody, we're going to put in the description, however, they're going to be able to reach you. Um, and they can really, really dive deep into this conversation. Okay. Because I don't want to put anything here that, yes, it may be liberating for us and it may help someone else, but it may hurt somebody else as well. So, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Course,
So
a lot of people going through what I slightly described, you think you kind of don't think that anyone else has gone through it because people don't talk about it or they don't know what it is. And it's like I said, it's a little bit more prevalent now, the words to it, but I've been able to help women already with this because they don't know what's going on and then you explain it. So yeah, your pain, I'm a firm believer in that statement. Your pain is your purpose. It becomes your purpose.
100%. So you've been through quite a bit. How long, and it may still be happening, but because there's so many things that are still unfolding, but how long did it take you to kind of navigate your divorce process?
Mhm. So this is fun. I'll tell this story. So when I was getting divorced, even though I'm a very powerful person, vibrant, vivacious, outgoing personality, the problem that I had that I did not know I had was low self-esteem or low self-worth. And when I was getting divorced, I met someone else that basically saw a weak, minded woman, and I got involved with this man. And I also so grateful. And I'll explain to you why, because he was even more horrible because he was more of like a real like crazy person. And there was some physical things. And I sought different kind of help. And I went to a support group for like almost like a domestic violence type of thing. And I never was afraid of him or anything like that, but it was like I sought this help. So I go to the support group and everyone's speaking. And I speak about this now a lot because if you went in this support group, let's say there was 12 women, six were, let's say, in poverty, maybe addicts or stuff like that. But six of us were upper middle class women, some affluent. So please know that if you're in a situation where in your domestic violence, it doesn't matter what walk of life you are, it does happen. I think some people think it's only in certain sects of society, but it's everywhere. But anyways, I went to this support group and I started to learn like I don't have any issues with this guy in that respect. I learned what my ex-husband was. Well, at that time I might have still been married. I don't know. And it was like an awakening for me, like, oh my God, that was me. I felt like that with him, not this guy. I felt like that with him, not this guy. So for me, that wasn't even like navigating divorce. It was like an awakening for me. Like, wow, I was just in a very abusive marriage without knowing I was in it because there was no physical abuse. There was mental abuse, monetarily abuse, and you don't know. And let me ask you what you think about this. I find it hard to use the word abuse. Like I've said this publicly on my social media because everyone, or at least I think like, oh, abuse, like you got your ass kicked. You get your ass kicked every day. But no, it's, mental is almost worse. Most of the time people who have physical have mental as well. I mean, it pretty much, I can probably bet $1 million on that. But at least with the physical, at one point you could say, look what's being done to me. Look, I have a black and blue look. I'm not saying that I don't wish that on anyone, but it was an awakening for me. And I went on to be manipulated by both of them at the same time, if you will. And then once the divorce was over, the other stuff didn't stop, with the kids and everything. So I think for me, that was my lessons. Like I started to do more self introspective. I started to look into personal development. I started to listen to things. I started to meditate. You just start to seek help for yourself.
Could we pinpoint what you just said? Because that's where I was going to go next exactly. And you mentioned it.
Okay. And what?
What you just finished saying to me, the way I perceive it, it seems like you took 100% responsibility. You didn't, maybe at some point during the process, you might have blamed them for certain things.
Oh,
But
yeah.
there was a point that you just described right now that to me, it seems like you said, enough is enough.
Mhm.
I'm up to here of the bullshit or the pain or or myself or or whatever it was for you. And I decide to take responsibility for my
Mm.
life, for my thoughts, for my situation. If we don't know that we're being abused, whatever that may entail, because it's a humongous parentheses and so many things fall into that. My best advice for anyone, and not just abuse, trauma, maybe you're in a workplace that you dislike, whatever. Maybe you have negative thoughts throughout the day. Maybe you don't like the story that you're telling yourself. I invite you to take 100% responsibility. My parents, I was raped. Take 100% responsibility in the now moment, right now,
Mm-hmm.
right now. And the only work we can do is the work we do on ourselves. That is
Absolutely.
the best favor we can do for the entire world. I'll tell you real quickly before we keep going with your story. When I first started coaching, so I opened my own private coaching 4 years ago, but I've been doing the work for longer than that. And I started coaching to help others. That's what I thought in my mind that I was doing. And all along, it was to help myself. And that I discovered that, of course, much later because the exact case of my clients, to the exact details, they were parts of me
Oh, yes.
that I still needed to work on, that I still needed to see, that I needed to explore from their perspective and with their help. So it's we're so much more connected than we think we are.
Oh, my God.
Like
Absolutely.
at such an interesting level. Um, but
I want to touch on something you just said it
yeah,
because I've said this to clients and it really is a aha moment and it touches on what you just said. So you're in this situation and yeah, I was, sometimes I still do it. You're in that like he's doing this and he's this and he's that and he's this or she, whatever it is, right? And then I finally said to myself, and I make my clients say it to themselves, wait a minute, why am I allowing this? So as soon as I had that, why am I allowing this? Then that's when the race was on because it's like, yeah, I could sit there and stay in that loop the whole time. Like, why is he doing this? Why is he doing this? But like, why are you there then if you don't like it? Why are you there? And then that's what made me say, like, wait a second, why am I there? Why am I doing this? And then you start to question yourself and you get to know yourself and why you're doing the things you're doing because my favorite expression, what you allow is what will continue. So it's like you said, it's taking 100% responsibility for what's going on. You're not responsible that person, let's say, you want to use someone that is a physically abused. You're not responsible for them making you hit you, let's say, but it's up to you to get out of it and seek help and do whatever. Some people can't leave right away. There's all things you
fine.
could do, but yeah, it is 100%. I am in the here and now. What can I do? Not like, oh, my parents didn't have money. Like, no. Okay. So we all have parents that fucked us up in some way, shape, or form. Okay. We all did. They might have not meant it. They might have been the best parents on the planet. But they did. If you look at society, right? It's like you are where you were raised and it could be good, bad, or not. But if you're not happy with it, guess whose job it is now to improve, change you. So we spoke about this, when we met. It's, when you have that awareness and the accountability, then, all the other things come a lot easier. It's not, I shouldn't say easy, it's simple, but a lot of this work is not easy, but you have
Yeah.
to do it. So
Yeah.
100% responsibility for yourselves. And when you take your power back, and taking your power back is taking responsibility. So if you take your power back, because when you're giving it away to other people, then you're powerless. So when you actually, I say this all the time, if you're blaming someone, you're actually powerless. It's actually giving your power away. So taking responsibility is actually powerful. It's the opposite of what people think. Like, I take responsibility, so that means that it's not their fault or whatever. No, you take responsibility is powerful because now you're in power. I can do something about this.
Yeah. Um, when I was connecting with my guides, they mentioned responsibility as our response and ability. And then like they broke it into two and they said it's our ability to respond to what happens to us. I very much resonate with what you're sharing and with your journey. Um, because you've had courage. It takes a lot of courage to look within, to look at our wounds, to lick our own wounds, to sew yourself back together, to seek for help. Um, so you went through all these things. You lost your sister. You had a rough childhood, XYZ, whatever, you lost your sister. You went through a very difficult divorce. And how did it look like getting to the light at the end of the tunnel? Like you started personal development, you met a mentor, you met a friend that introduced you, you read a book that changed your life and you want to recommend. How does that, like, okay, there's a way out at least, right? Something at the end of the tunnel. Like, how did that little roadmap kind of look like for you?
You're on that road without knowing you're on that road once you wake up to it. But for me, I can't specifically think of anything at the moment of like exact. I do remember looking at, believe it or not, how to do with my kids and like how to be a better parent, like with the communication and stuff and just parenting, which I can definitely help people nowadays with that because there's not many parents out there that want to be parents, but that's a whole nother podcast. But I think it was just like learning, like being open to learning and how to improve myself. And Abraham Hicks, I don't know if you're familiar with, like, let's start listening to Abraham Hicks and meditations and a lot of I am affirmations. And that's why I am grateful for everything. Because when I felt so alone, because I really didn't have anybody, who do you have? You have yourself, right? And you just start to gain confidence and get to know who you are and like love yourself or like yourself. And as you like yourself, you start to do more things for yourself and look into things and like, just look, you actually look. I'm a research queen, so I was probably researching and looking at things, and I'll research everything. And that's probably how I found it, was by research, a lot of it. And I have a good friend that recommended Abraham Hicks, but I think it's just that self-discovery, personal development. How can, without saying to yourself, like, how can I improve myself? You're just on this journey. And if you want to say your guides or the universe just started to kind of push me that way. And I'm still on that road. You're always learning. We're always becoming more and more enlightened. You don't become enlightened and then that's it. You just keep going and going and growing. And like I say, my glow, like I was always taught to be small and not be that shining light that you are. So then once I started to be this shining light and be comfortable with it, and I'm still sometimes have issues, but you then become confident, and if you want to use, let's say, abuse as an example, that you will never, ever put up with that again, ever, ever. And for me, I like to tell clients in the divorce sect is that for me, and I have a very different personality, so you can't, there are people that might not be able to do this, but I literally did everything by myself. I had another boyfriend after that. He was a very nice guy, whatever, it didn't work out. And I started to do everything by myself. I'd go to concerts and I'd go to here and I had the best fucking time. I'm a lot of fun. So, and I just started to, if you want to use that term, date yourself. And I started to use this analogy of that you want to become, and I don't even think you need to go through divorce for this. I think everyone needs to do this in their lifetime, even as young adults going into adulthood. You become an island and you are your island, and everything you need is on that island. Your love, your validation, your food, your water, everything that is sustaining for you. You don't need anything from anywhere else. And once you're comfortable being on that island and you have everything you need within yourself, then maybe you want to invite people on that island to share your life with you, because we are conditioned in society, in my opinion, to look outward for our love, for our validation, for everything is outward. Even our connection to whatever you want to call it is outward. Go to this building, go do this, do this. And I'm not, I don't even want to get into that subject, but you know what I mean? We're taught to go outward, like look outside of yourself is where it all is. And guess what? No, everything is here. The power that creates worlds is right here in front of you. When you look in that mirror, you are the most powerful person. And I even have a hard time sometimes saying, like, to myself, I'm very hard on myself. And another thing I want your listeners to know that we're in this space and we may be here, but we still have the same issues. They still creep in. We're not these perfect beings. I've been very not nice to myself lately, verbally. And I'm very aware of that lately. Like, you gotta like watch your I ams. I call it I am what? I am is two of the most powerful words you can say, because what comes after that is your truth. So if you're listening, we're not perfect, but we just we'll catch it quicker. But yeah, that's it's all about being open and aware and willing to do the hard work. And a lot of times it's the feelings. We don't want, it's the feelings that don't feel good, but when you push through them, you get to the other side.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like a lot of people are gonna resonate with what you're sharing. And I will touch on something personal that I'm going through, so people can feel heard and seen and identified with, because like you mentioned, there's no exception. I'm no exception to any rule. Just living this human experience like everybody else, jumping the obstacles and learning different tools that help me. Right now, I'm working with a coach. By the way, I invite coaches to have coaches. We also need another reflection, to reflect back to us, or another perspective of certain things we can't see.
Mm.
Just because we've been doing it long enough doesn't mean that we don't benefit from being a student, in this type of work. So I've been working a lot with finding a different type of balance between my feminine and masculine. For
Mm.
so long, for many years, I operated 90% masculine and 10% feminine. And that worked for a while, and I achieved a lot of success, and I did a lot of things with that, and I'm grateful. But there was a point in my life, especially after certain health issues, um, where I craved my femininity, and I wanted to embody that more. And I had no clue how to do that. That was not my conditioning. So I've been transitioning that, and being aware of how I talk to myself, how I cultivate my garden within me in all aspects, right? Whether it's spirituality, relationship, finances, all of it inside, that doesn't depend on outside approval from social media, from your partner, from whatever, right? So one of the things I have been doing to cultivate that has been painting. Painting puts me in a place where I feel free. I feel very connected to my feminine, to my goddess creative side. I feel connected to God. Um, so just explore different things, different avenues. Maybe it's dancing, maybe it's breath work, maybe it's plant medicine, whatever. Maybe it's a walk in nature, or trekking, or biking. Um, but just explore your relationship with yourself. I feel like one of the biggest relationships and the soulmate, one of the soulmates that we're looking for is ourselves, like our connection to our higher self, or what our soul really wants to do, how it feels joy, how it finds joy in this life, how it thrives. And then from that place, it's such a powerful place because it's your roots. If your foundation is made in the sand and it hasn't taken root, any obstacle that comes along is just going to sweep you away. It's not going to take. So working in our self-reflection and our relationship with ourselves has been one of the most helpful things I've ever done for myself.
I
So
100% agree. And it's an ongoing process. It's not like going to school for X amount of time and then you're done. It's literally constant. It's a daily activity. It's
daily
like,
activity. What are some of your daily activities that you like to do?
okay, so I start my day with, um, I always journal, but now I'm doing a brain dump first. So I start with, journaling, and then I do gratitude and I kind of say what's on my mind. Cause I used to not do that. I used to think my journal should just be grateful and everything's gratitude. And then the rest would be in my head and it wouldn't stay there because I'll tell you about my next step. But I now like write some things, so I journal, get it all out, and then do the gratitude. And then I do a stretch meditation. I'll stretch for about, I don't know, anywhere 20 minutes or so with type of like affirmations or something type of meditation. And I personally love going on YouTube and like I have my favorites or just Google something that's bothering me and I'll be like, meditation for whatever, XYZ. And then and then I'll do whatever time I have left, I'll devote to a regular meditation, either a visualization or just stillness, quiet. And that is a non negotiable for me. I do that every day. And for me, even if I feel like it's not doing anything, it's definitely doing an immense amount. And I'm sure you know about meditation and the benefits. And that is one of the most simplest ways to help yourself. And, it's not only just sitting crisscross applesauce on the, I say this in, I forgot if I said it on one of my posts. It's not about wearing, Lululemons and Birkenstocks and, eating granola, it's not anything like that. It's about just quieting your mind. And if you can't do that, that's fine. Maybe have a guided meditation and taking that time out to connect to you and the power of the world, because we're so, especially nowadays, we're so filled with electronics and this and school and kids, blah, blah, blah. And then you can't hear your higher being. You can't hear your inner being. You can't hear it if it's cluttered. So it helps you be able to hear.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and then, those are the two things that I swear by. And then obviously there's other things throughout the day that I do.
Thank you for sharing that. I concur with that 100%. And I invite people to play around with it until you find a routine that you like that feels good for you. I want to touch on exercise, because to me, exercise is way more than that. Is related to mental health, is related to coping. It's related to everything. Um, and nutrition as well. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, unfortunately. Our food has been tampered with, our mental health, including both diagnosis and medication,
Absolutely.
for, just to call it something, the big pharma, or just whatever, any other agenda, but the well-being of humanity as a whole. Um, so I feel like, again, we go back to taking responsibility as an individual. What can we do? And in this case, I would like for you to speak about what your road, with, staying healthy, with exercise, with nutrition has been, because That's such a key part. That's something I struggle with. And maybe one-on-one, you and I can work through that because I have been going through that, with my hormones, with age, everything changes. It's harder to lose the weight. Like I was always 103, 113 at the most. In the past, say 4 years, I've had not been able to lose the weight. And I've done so much. So it's definitely, you know, um, a challenge that is here to be transcended, worked with, understood, and which I appreciate because I've been able to look at nutrients, at food, at the microbiome, at gut health, the gut brain axis, and just so many things that if I had not gone through that, maybe I had never stopped to look at it. So, what has been your personal journey with the weight, with menopause, with the health aspect of that?
Well, like I touched on before, I was like a heavy kid, and then when I got to whatever age I was, 15, I had lost weight and got in shape. I was always athletic, and I got a lot of attention for that. So go move forward, and I'm skipping over years, but I became a professional figure athlete with you're like a bodybuilder, but it's not bodybuilding; it's more like feminine. And so, of course, I know about exercise and nutrition to get into that kind of shape. And it is a very big part of my day. I didn't bring that up. I was only going for like the spiritual and mental health, but like I have to train. Like it's something embedded in me. I have to. There are days I don't want to, but it's just part. So I definitely train. I do weight training, and elliptical now. I have some back problems. Can't really jog, but like that is definitely part of a very important part of my day. And sometimes I have to remind myself why. Because, are you doing it for vanity reasons or are you doing it for health reasons? And bringing up the menopause, which we both discussed. So I always keep going to the gym because it's so healthy for you, right? But it gets frustrating when you feel like it's not doing anything. I mean, it is per se, but it, I tend to get overwhelmed when you start to get into the healthy and the stuff about food and everything. And I just try and be as healthy as I can and not really think too much about it if I'm not buying organic chicken that day or whatever. But I try and eat clean, which means like try not to eat junk and all that crap and try and maintain weight. And said menopause, I mean, I feel like I'm in someone else's body. That's what I feel like. Especially coming from my background, that was my occupation. I knew what to do. So now that you know what to do and it's not working, it's quite frustrating. So I also feel like it's what was the word you said? Oh, challenge. Okay. I feel like it's challenge. And it's also a way for me to say, like, okay, what if you stayed the way you were and you're not going to be looked at anymore for your definition? Because I'm certainly not defined right now, like for your definition and for being in shape. I mean, people see me, they know you're in shape, but I'm talking about like what I'm used to. What if that's not what your identity is anymore?
Can we pause one moment?
Yes.
Guys, going through identity crisis and what we base who we are and our value and attention and love. Ultimately, it comes down to as a humanity, and I include myself very much in this, is one of the big woundings is self-worth.
Absolutely.
As a humanity, as a collective, the collective unconscious, it is completely wounded with the unworthiness.
Mhm.
That is something at the deepest level, abuse, abandonment, all of it. And I worked with so many clients. We go to what's underneath that, and it comes down to self-worth.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so it's important to find that inner garden and cultivate it, regardless of what's going on outside,
Absolutely.
regardless of your profession, regardless of your looks, regardless of who you think you are. So when I do breath work and I lead people, one of the things, the introductory, um, I use a lot of healing icaros, which are songs from the Amazon and things like that. And there's a space that we get to where everybody's kind of like the walls are down and you're a little bit more relaxed. And I say, okay, so start imagining like you're taking off all of the layers that define you, your profession, being a mother, being a daughter, being a human, your name, right? And then they eventually get to be this little ball of light, like a second sun, right? So from there, from being energy, from being love, from your true essence, really nothing outside of you can really do anything. It's just an experience to be lived, to be felt, to be transformed, to all of those things. And thank you for being honest and vulnerable while being a coach. Because
Yeah.
I feel being a leader, being a coach, being a conscious leader, there's that could also be a trap for us.
Mhm.
Um, being this perfect white light and love being. There's a lot more than that in this work.
Absolutely.
So it takes guts to stand here and say, again, we're going through identity crises and life and death and rebirth. And that's the real shit that's happening.
Yeah.
We do nothing by coming on here and say, "Oh, perfect, come do a session with me." That's not going to help anybody.
No.
We're working through this shit together, okay? Maybe somebody that's 80 can come and talk to you and be like, "Oh, honey, that's nothing. I've been through that, whatever." And then they're like, but maybe somebody like me that's kind of dipping their toes in that, and you're ahead of the curve, then we can work together, and then you can guide me and be like, "All right, I got you. Let me walk you through this." So thank you for being open and true. And I feel that authenticity. If you guys are watching the video and not just listening, she's the real deal.
I am the real deal. I am the
And I
real deal.
like that.
And I'm glad that you brought that up because I did I think it was a social media post, and and since we're speaking about menopause, the whole entire time here, I feel like I haven't said what I wanted to say because I have menopause brain. So like, excuse, I mean, my brain feels like it's a horrible feeling. But what I wanted to say is that I actually even made a post of that, something to the effect of like, when I'm speaking to you, meaning social media, I'm really talking to myself as a reminder. When I'm helping you, I might not even need it, but it reminds me. It reminds me of where I came from. It reminds me of how much I've grown. It reminds me of how powerful I am and how worthy and deserving I am and you are and everyone is. And it reminds me of not to be like, I have a very bad habit right now. Speaking of menopause, is the second I wake up, I look in the mirror and I'm just like, and just today, journal, like, why are you starting your day like that? With looking at yourself and saying that, you know what? You don't look like you did, and maybe you will again. I'm very confident in that. But like, stop looking at, first of all, what you look like anyway, and how you're going to start your day, and just look within. In one of my rooms, I stretch in one room, but I lay down and do meditation in another room because there's a bed in there and there's a mirror in there. And just pretty new, about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. I've literally talked to myself in the mirror as if I'm the little girl, or as if I am looking at myself as like someone else. And what would you say to yourself? I did a post today, something like, I would never speak to my children or my husband the way I speak to myself sometimes. So I got to check that. Like, I have to speak to myself the same way I would speak to someone I love with all my heart. So, we're definitely not perfect beings, even though we could guide you to, a higher place or guide you to where you want to be. Doesn't mean that we are perfect.
Yeah. And another thing I want to point out is in regards to when it comes to coaching, like for me, the coaching session I had with one of my coaches, it's nothing new. We're not telling you, essentially, if you really, really in the core of your being, you already know.
Yes.
We are just reflecting back to you, maybe a different angle, or maybe something that even triggers you. Because one of the things she said to me, "Oh, this is a possibility." And my answer to her, and I noticed how defensive it was, I said, "Absolutely not." And I was like, and I caught myself and I'm like, so interesting that I answered in that way and that I felt triggered by what you said to me. So thank you for bringing it up. So yeah, it's constant work.
The very thing. And I just had this conversation with my husband before I got on here, and it wasn't. It was kind of like that. I actually said, like, we all need to ask ourselves sometimes why you answer in certain ways, because it usually has nothing to do with the person. It's
Yeah.
what's going on in you. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's not fun to hear that, when you're not in the mood to hear it. So a lot of
Yeah.
times you get defensive or whatever. Like I said, we're all human. And sometimes you go back to that knee-jerk reaction to things, or things that you didn't uncover yet, or not fully, or fully healed from, or whatever it may be. So it's, my whole thing with people is, what I've learned is, I want to awaken and inspire people, but you also can't do that to anyone that's not ready for it or willing.
Thank you for also pointing that out. Tell me a little bit about how you help people now. Because I know you've had a transition, pretty much. How does it look like? Like what type of services do you offer? How does that look like? Because I know you're very multifaceted.
Yes.
Um, so tell us a little bit about that.
So, like I said, I'm like at the core personal development coach, if you will, and help people create a life they fucking love with mindset shifts, reclaiming their power, finding happiness and inner peace within themselves. And I specialize, or I have a specialty in, the women who are either going through divorce, or in a toxic relationship, or just the low self-esteem, like all that confidence, whatever. So for right now, I have my own podcast, which I love because that's personal development all over the place. It's called the Elise Morgan Experience Podcast. I have my Instagram page, and I'm working on a book is coming out. And how you can work with me is, I have a few things up in the air. So I'm having locally in Florida, going to be setting up a 1-day retreat for these women, to that can teach them some ways to get either through it or past it. And also, coaching, so one-on-one coaching is, always great. People love being coached themselves, and also having, that one-on-one attention, and also group coaching. So like I have a whole array of how you can work with me. So I urge you to get in touch with me, free discovery call. It's just no strings attached. Just want to hear your story, see if I can help you, and help you right on the phone, right on the discovery call. You'll get something you need on that call, whether we work together or not, because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to help you. So whether you continue with me is up to you, but you will get something on the call. So
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. We're going to put all of the information in the description so they can reach out. It could be easy, and they'll know how to find you.
yeah.
Is there any last messages you want to leave the listeners with, or any last messages in general you want to share with us?
I see you, I know you, and I love you, and you are worthy and deserving of a life you absolutely love.
Well, I needed to hear that at least. So thank you.
I actually got tears in my eyes saying that, because I think I was saying it to myself. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Elise. The honor is all mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. For more, follow us on Instagram at Quantum Alchemist Master.